The first thing I wanted to start with, and I'm not going to go in detail with this, is if you go to YouTube and you search for Zoom, there's a tremendous amount of resources right here. A whole bunch of videos on how to do almost everything that we're talking about for this platform. None of these are specific to Narcotics Anonymous because you got to remember that this platform was not designed for us. We're adapting to it. So keep that in mind when you look at these videos. But these are all on YouTube. You can watch all of them, all free. They have their own account. So after you create an account, and I'm not going to walk through the basics on how to create an account because this video is for that. After you create an account, it's going to bring you to your account page, your personal meeting ID. We're going to get into the settings about why that's important. And you're going to start scheduling and setting up your meetings. Like some of the things that Shane talked about were the accessibility. What he's talking about with that is that if you go to schedule a Zoom meeting and you don't have good internet in your area, you may have some bandwidth issues. That robot voice, your video is going to freeze. So you may want to consider if it's video only, audio only, or audio and video. These are things that you have to think about when you're using Zoom. A lot of this is over the internet. So keep that in mind, right? We're going to go over in the settings and in real time how to take control of the meeting via mute and unmute, allow participants to unmute themselves, etc. We're going to talk a little bit about raising your hand on your cell phone if you're just calling in for phone only. Or how to raise your hand on the actual smartphone app and on your computer. These are very important things. So we're going to start there. Yeah, go ahead.
So what you're looking at right here, so individuals that are out there trying to be proactive and helpful and setting up Zoom meetings for their home group. If you create a personal account with your email for Zoom as a participant and then decide, well, I'll just use this for the meeting, that's perfectly fine. Just be aware that if you want to change the name of your Zoom to be not your name, but the name of the group, you can see on this page where you see edit next to Chris R. If you click edit, that's where you would change the name for your home group so that it will be what's called persistent. So it'll always be that name on people's phones in their history list. So you can just put something in the first name, something in the last name, and that's where you see that. And then scroll down. If you decide to allow other chair people, if you have a Monday night and a Wednesday night meeting and John is going to help you open up and share Wednesday night meeting, down at the bottom, scroll down to the bottom, sign in password. You don't want the username and password to be the same username and password that you're using for your email. You'll want to change the password here so that people you're sharing this with will be able to log in. If they forget the password, they change it accidentally, air quotes, your email address will be what can be used to go in and reset the password. That's all I got. Thanks, Chris.
You're welcome. All right, we're going to get into the actual settings. So let's say you have your account right now. You want to schedule your meeting. Before you launch that meeting, there's some basic things that we've learned that hard one experiencing that you may want to check out. Let's schedule up, scroll up here, settings and meeting.
Chris, this is my favorite part. Click on, first thing you do is go to recording and turn all that off. Turn it all off. Make sure all that is off. We don't want people that are new, that are coming for the first time, venturing into this for the first time, and they see a big old fat record button at the bottom and lose it. Fine. So first thing you should do when you hit settings is click over to recordings and turn all that off. Go ahead, Chris.
All right. So there's two different types of recording. Allow host and participants to record. That's exactly what Kelly's saying. That's the top one. And the other one is cloud recording for the host. I would just keep it off if you're just doing regular meetings. We do a lot of service, so that's why mine's on. All right, back to the meeting. the way my account is set up and the way a lot of ours are is when you join this meeting, the video is going to be off for both host and participants as soon as you join. That's up to the individual's choice if they want to turn the video on. And we find that the safest thing for us to do is leave it off. Not everyone realizes that when you join a Zoom meeting, your video could be on. We're in your home now. What we've seen are some interesting things so far this week. People getting dressed or undressed, shaving. Someone possibly may have passed away for a few minutes and woke back up. We see some odd things. So just keep the video off and allow the participant the choice. People using, yeah. So allow the participant.
We had to turn video off last night during our home group because somebody was rolling up a doobie.
Yeah. So keep that off when they enter. If they turn it on, it's their choice. Now, as a co-host, you're going to have to be watching the videos for exactly those things that we just mentioned. And then as a co-host, you can shut off their video if they do something that's just not right. Now, these are personal choice, right? Join before the host. Like a lot of us joined here before there was a host in this meeting. They left it on. You don't have to do that. You can shut this off and then turn on a waiting room if you want. That's your preference. A waiting room, think of it like a holding tank. You want to join, you're going to go into this area before the meeting starts because you want to get in there early. It's your choice. I'd leave mine on. So if you guys want to join up and talk and hang out when I'm not in there, that's perfectly fine. As a host, I'll show you further down, you're going to get an email notification that the participants are in your meeting. James has his hand up. Do you want to answer questions as we go or wait till the end? Wait till the end. Okay.
No.
James, put your question in the chat and it'll get put into the queue and we'll answer it towards when we get to that stage.
The next two things we're going to talk about are the PMI, the personal meeting ID. So I leave both of these checked on. One is to schedule a meeting and the other is for an instant meeting. The personal meeting ID is the number at the top of your screen. Right now, if you're looking at your screen, top left-hand side, you see a number. This meeting is set up to use that same number every single time it launches. This is very important if you're doing a recurring meeting. If you're using a different number each time, it's a different link each time. If you check on personal meeting ID, PMI, it'll be the same number every single time you launch a scheduled meeting. And if you see right below it, for an instant meeting, I have the same thing. Instant meetings and scheduled meetings will be the same number for me. That creates that stability and continuity that we need for Narcotics Anonymous. We're going to talk about that a little bit after I go through settings, but why that's important. I'm going to skip a lot of these. You want to password protect your meeting, you totally can. If you don't want random people joining, this is the internet. So once you post this link out there, anyone can join. As Kelly found out, if you don't password protect it and someone gets your link, they can hop in your meeting and can be disruptive. Kelly's the only one that I know that has been trolled training people.
Hard.
It's amazing. So if you want to protect your meeting by invite only, essentially, you protect it with a password. Mute participants upon entry. That's how this meeting's set up, and that's how most that I've been to are. So as soon as you join that Zoom meeting, everyone that joins is muted right away. Much like the video, it's up to the participant to unmute themselves or turn their video on. This is a way to hold that atmosphere of recovery. It's like walking into your home group meeting and making a bunch of noise as the meeting's going on. It's very disruptive. So by muting everyone as they enter, hopefully we're trying to control that a little bit so it's not disruptive. The chat. This has lately become a thing. So I have it turned on. Shane has it turned on. There's a couple of different options. The basic chat, when you type in a message, everyone can see it. Right now, we're using that to answer questions as we go. It's very useful. There are going to be some downsides. So if you have one co-host watching videos, you should also have another co-host watching the chat for what's being talked about in the chat. If there's any attacks going on and anything that's inappropriate, you need someone to watch that. If you decide to leave the chat on, you can shut it off completely, and then it's gone. The checkbox right below it, prevent the participants from saving chat. I strongly recommend this. If you decide to leave your chat on and you have people sharing phone numbers, email addresses, and you do not check that box, anyone in your meeting can now save that chat and get all of that information. So I think this is a great way to protect people their anonymity and their phone numbers and everything. Like I said, if you save chat, it gets private messages too. Keep that checked. Don't allow participants to save the chat. It's my opinion, but you'll understand. You understand why. Private chat enabled. We usually leave it on in most cases. We'll get SB. We'll get to questions afterward. Private chat, I leave it on for this exact reason. If you have a question, you can contact a host or co-host directly, but you can also contact other people. So there's a downside to that, like one-on-one. For this webinar that we're doing right now, it's been disabled, as Shane talked about beforehand, so we don't get ourselves into trouble.
Well, let's hit that real quick while we're looking at it, Chris. So think about a service meeting and then think about a recovery meeting. You know,
Right.
like there are certain encouragements in the NA literature about, you know, men with men, women with women, or encouraging non-sexual relationships that are involved in mentorship. So that's why in a recovery meeting, we allow a private chat so that people who possibly could have predatory behavior are able to talk to each other in a private chat without their information being out in the open, like women or other minorities, additional needs, common needs people. But in the service setting, we disable it. So that's why there's a difference in which way we make a decision on that.
The next thing we're going to talk about is the file transfer. If you decide to turn file transfer on, what that's saying is that in your chat box, I can send any file, upload anything from my computer or phone directly into the chat and share it with everyone. Now in the service world, you're probably going to be fine. We're going to be sharing flyers back and forth, or it's some type of service document. It's great. In a meeting with 200 or 300 people or 400 people, you don't know what they're going to share. So for a regular personal recovery meeting, I would turn that off and not allow people to upload files to the chat, just because we don't know what they're going to put on there. You know, we have to be, what we're trying to do is just protect everyone in the meeting. And if these little basic things can help do that, we're going to do that. You know, I don't want anyone to upload an inappropriate photo and now 400 people see this thing. I don't want that. None of us want that. If we want to protect the atmosphere of recovery virtually, that's what we're trying to do. This is a great way to begin doing that. Now, a lot of people that buy the Zoom account, the first thing they tell us is, I can't make a co-host. How do I do that? Everyone has the ability to do that with a purchased account. You have to turn it on. It doesn't come on automatically. This co-host thing, you must have it checked on. So if you look at the participants list right now, we have one host and multiple co-hosts. That's why. The co-host feature allows all these co-hosts to have the same tools as the host, so they can mute and unmute everyone. They can shut off video. They can do all that stuff. And it's going to be very helpful for you when you're facilitating your online meetings to have multiple co-hosts. You know, the more the merrier in some cases. This is my new favorite feature, is to put attendees on hold. I think this is fantastic. So what this does is, if you check it on, say you see someone that's, you know, as Shane said, getting high in the meeting, rolling up a joint or something. I'm going to go to that attendee. I'm going to click pause attendee. And what that does is basically put them in the penalty box. You're going to get a big white screen and it says the host has paused you, or I forget exactly what it says, but you're going to get a big white screen. It's going to get your attention right away. And it removes you from the general meeting, but does not remove you from the meeting itself. So you can't see or hear anything and you can't read the chat. When they're in there, the host or co-host can send them a message and explain why that they're there. So if I put you in this holding tank, the penalty box, because I saw you getting high, I can send you a message. Listen, we saw you doing this, just like our meetings, right? Drugs or paraphernalia, leave them outside, you're welcome to return. I saw you doing this. You're more than welcome to return to the meeting, but your video will remain off for the rest of the meeting. The same thing in the chat. If they're doing anything inappropriate in the chat, you can put them in that holding tank and you say, listen, we see this. You're welcome to return to the meeting, but if this continues, you will be removed from the meeting. Or if you don't want to give them a chance, you just kick them out. But that's what that means. They put attendee on hold. It's a great way just to kind of remove them real quick to get their attention. It's like, wake up. This is what you're doing. Please stop. And then welcome them back in.
It's also very effective for trolls.
Yeah. Because, like I said, you don't actually get removed from the meeting. You're in a holding tank. So you just kind of sit there and wait. Like, how long is this going to take? It's great. That's a great feature. show meeting control toolbar. It's on. So if you're a host, it's more for a host aspect. Like I see mute, stop video participants, new share, pause, all that stuff. There's a control toolbar, and it's just saying have that visible at all times for me, rather than disappearing and reappearing. I like having it on my screen at all times. Screen sharing. This is another thing that we've had to learn through experience. That this used to be, who can share a screen? All participants. And what we found out is if you're having a meeting with 400 people, anyone in that meeting can request to share their screen. And if you're not paying attention and you click OK, anyone in that meeting is now sharing their screen with everyone. So the way my settings are set up, and I think a lot of us have begun doing this, is just the host only. So host or co-host are the only ones that are going to be able to share the screen now. Moving down, another thing that we learned recently is the annotation. When I do a screen share, if you're on a cell phone and you start swiping left and right, you're now going to be writing on the screen for everyone to see. We've just learned this. This is great. So turn that off. It's the same thing with whiteboard. It's for a meeting. You're not going to need it. It's exactly what it sounds like. It's a whiteboard. It's going to create a screen that you can actually draw on the screen so everyone can see. You don't need that for a meeting. Keep it off. As soon as people start realizing how to use Zoom, if you have these settings turned on, they're going to exploit them. Just keep them off. It's easy. And this is going to be your meeting's choice. Remove participants to rejoin. If I kick you out of the meeting and this is checked on, you're more than welcome to rejoin. If I turn this off and I kick you out of the meeting, you're not supposed to be able to get back into that meeting. And for my case, I have my PMI turned on and my meeting runs essentially 24 hours a day. If I kick you out, you can't come back today. So that's why I leave that on. I haven't been trolled. Kelly might have different settings with his. Now these down here, we're gonna start talking about service related things for Zoom. I'm not gonna go into a lot of depth with this because we're gonna try to keep this on recovery meetings. But breakout rooms, what that does, say there's 400 people in your meeting right now, and they all want to share. It's regular recovery meeting. If you set a breakout room, I can take that 400 and break it up into groups of 25 or 50 in multiple virtual rooms at the exact same time. If I put a co-host in each one, now people have a better chance to be able to share. For larger meetings, breakout rooms will be great. We use them a lot in service. And allow hosts to assign participants to breakout rooms when scheduling. That's what I'm talking about. If I make you a co-host, you can now move people into different rooms, and you can move yourself from different rooms. It's just a useful tool to have, especially for larger meetings. If your meeting is not that big, I wouldn't worry about it. If you want to talk more about this outside of this webinar, about breakout rooms for service, we're more than happy to do that. But that's how breakout rooms can go into your regular recovery meeting when it's large.
And just one quick drop in there. One of the things I've been kind of observing and thinking about is if you have a very helpful, knowledgeable member that's in a meeting and can help people with issues, you may want to ask them to be co-host and sort of bite the bullet and hang out in a breakout room. And then when you get members that come in that have audio problems, video problems, and you can move them into the tech support room, and then a person can just sit there not interrupting the rest of the meeting and help them. Their microphone is having feedback sounds. They need to, there's a lot of time we see people spending trying to get their equipment to work that doesn't disrupt the meeting. A breakout room could be helpful if you have someone willing to volunteer, like childcare, in some meetings. A member will volunteer to go into a room and do childcare while the mom or the dad can have a meeting for that hour. So you'd have a member that would just hang out in a breakout room for tech support to help people with all their audio, video. I don't know how to use Zoom issues.
Yep. Virtual background, you can turn it on or off. It doesn't matter. There's a few people in here right now that have it going. It's a picture behind you. That's all. It doesn't matter if it's on or off. Well, I shouldn't say it doesn't matter. It depends what they're projecting. It could matter. So again, that's why you're going to have multiple co-hosts. So if someone does have a virtual background that's inappropriate, your co-host will shut off their video, or you can just turn that off. Again, that's a personal preference. You can have an auto answer in group chat. I turn that off because I think they're really annoying when people do it to me, so I just don't like them. Again, personal preference. Right here. It's the waiting room that I was talking about earlier. So if I allow people to join my meeting before I join, if I have that turned on, waiting room will automatically be turned off. If I make it so people cannot join before me, I can choose to turn the waiting room on. And then again, you'll be put into like a separate little meeting area before I join. It's off because you can join my meeting whenever. Join from browser link. That's that web link. When you create a Zoom meeting, it creates a web link, zoom.us/J/ whatever the number is. That's what that is. It's for today. What you're finding on Facebook, a lot of people are joining meetings using a browser link. Some people are starting to learn that all you need is the number. It's just a good thing to have on. It's a quick one-click thing. I can text it to all my friends. I can text it everywhere. Just click the link. You're in. Live stream meeting. So mine is turned off, as you see. Again, this is your personal choice. I would recommend keeping it off so people are not you or anyone are live streaming a recovery meeting for the whole world to see. We still have that thing called anonymity. It's a great thing to keep off because I don't want me being live streamed across all of Facebook, across YouTube, or whatever. So just keep that off. These are recording things. I'm not going to go into a ton of detail with anything that's being recorded because we just shut off all that stuff. So I'm not even going to talk about that. This is the notification I was talking about. When someone joins my meeting before I do, I get an email. Your attendees are waiting. So if you join up and I'm not there because my Zoom meeting's open 24 hours a day. I get emails constantly throughout the day. People are now in there. I can choose to join with them and try to figure out why they're there. Like on Sunday nights for a while, I was hosting car workshops, and people would join like on a Saturday or Wednesday for that 7 p.m. car workshop. I would get the notification. I would join, explain to them this doesn't take place till Sunday. I would recommend keeping that on. In the email settings further down, you're going to get that email sent to you. Just removing the host, not a big deal. Email setting, when I do it, it's in English. It's not a big deal. And that's really it for the settings. So when you schedule your Zoom meeting, make sure you go through all of your settings one at a time to make sure they're set up properly before the meeting starts, before you even schedule it, actually. So what Kelly found out is if you schedule a meeting and then adjust your settings after that meeting is now scheduled based on your previous settings. So adjust your settings, schedule your meeting, you're good to go. Before we go much further, I want to talk about if you join using your cell phone only, call in only, you can still mute and unmute yourself and you can still raise your hand. Right here, phone controls for participants. *6 is to toggle you mute and unmute. *9 is going to be to raise your hand. That's all you're going to need.
Chris, I'm sorry. I hate to interrupt you. Is there any way you can make your screen a little larger? The writing is like super small. I just wanted to see if you could do that.
Better?
Much, much better. Much, much better.
Rockstar.
All right.
That's got to do with your screen, Wilvina. Ours was fine.
I'm going to punch you, Shane.
So everything I just shared with you is direct from the Zoom website itself. So you can go back through that. Again, there's a lot of help videos on YouTube. But I just want to talk about these two controls for dial-in only, because that's all you're going to need if you're dialing in. You're not going to be accessing chat on your cell phone, right? So you don't need any of that stuff.
Chris, what are some situations for dial-in only? Like if you don't have internet, if there's a storm and you lose your internet for a brief time, we have people in Kentucky that's their reality, and they call into the regional meeting on their phone. They never come via the internet. So, that's a good option for people to understand how to use that. And it presents on the host screen, just like anyone else in the meeting. It'll just say the name of your phone, the phone number or a portion of it, or the type of phone it is. And it has just a symbol of a phone sitting there. So we know that you're there. And when you raise your hand, we can see you the same as everyone else to put you in the sharing queue. if you want to share during the meeting. So, thank you.
All right, so I'm going to switch screens now to the Word doc that we created. So that's all your settings. You get your recovery meeting up and running. Now there's some things we got to talk about when your meeting is up and running. We in our in-person meeting, we talk about the atmosphere of recovery, how to protect that, and sharing one at a time. You're not using it in the meeting, not being disruptive, all this stuff. Well, we don't have guidelines right now for virtual meetings, and people have been asking for this stuff. So atmosphere of recovery virtually. This is not the end all say all. This is the beginning of a conversation that our fellowship as a whole should really continue, because we should be talking about this stuff. If you join a meeting and you're not wearing clothes, would you do that at an in-person meeting? I hope not.
No, sorry.
Kelly might. This includes men wearing no shirt. If you want to have a men's meeting and you guys all want to be topless, do your thing. But a general recovery meeting, I recommend even men keep your shirts on. Okay, it's just a good practice. Everything that you would do in an in-person meeting, please try to carry that same behavior into the virtual meetings. Any background images of drug use, offensive gestures, gang signs, middle finger, or anything in the background, like your co-hosts are going to be scanning your videos for that, to see any of that stuff, and you will get either removed or the video turned off. So this is a new atmosphere that we're walking into. None of us really know how to proceed with this, so we're learning as we go.
There is one very small possibility that I ran into, that if you have individuals that are at home in high school and are completely bored out of their mind and think it's really fun to troll drug addicts, what they can do is in their Zoom profile picture, they can put extremely offensive racist pictures and then join the meeting and troll you that way. And so just be aware that you can't turn off a video in that situation. And the hold feature is a very effective way to just, put them in hold. Sometimes you may think, well, I'll just remove them and then they can't come back in, like I did. And for whatever reason, however I had my settings, even though I did have them before the chat blows up, because I didn't have my settings right. Chris was there. I had my settings all locked down. And we may have to have some testing on at another time. Chris and I may set up a room and do some testing to see how they were coming back in. They may be creating new accounts over and over and over and over and over, and it just kept coming in. But if you put them in the hold, they'll get bored and go find another room to troll. But just be aware that changing your profile picture allows them to put images or offensive material that you can't block unless you're out of the room.
When you create your Zoom account and your basic settings for your profile, if you looked at mine, it shows a picture of Rocco from Rocco's Modern Life. It's just a little cartoon drawing. This is what Kelly's talking about. So if I turn my video off, now you see this photo that I have created on my profile for Zoom. So you should be looking at a cartoon drawing. Now imagine if that cartoon drawing was something offensive, and you can turn my video off, and now everyone's looking at that thing.
And mine is my World of Warcraft character, Fury Warrior, by the way. Really awesome gear.
No one knows what that means. So again, when we talk about creating atmosphere of recovery virtually, this is a new background for us, so we're learning as we go. Like a lot of what we've learned in recovery, it's a hard-won experience, right? And that's what we're getting to. These are things that we've learned. We've toyed with the idea of maybe writing up a fact sheet or some type of an IP to talk about disruptive behavior in online meetings, because we have to do something quickly. But this is a good conversation to have. So when your home group is hosting a meeting, you should talk about these things, what you're willing to accept and not accept, before the meeting actually takes place. And when we talk about using your personal meeting ID, the PMI, the reason that's so important for a regular scheduled NA meeting online right now, in my opinion of this, is going to be for public relations. If we're sending addicts that can't get to meetings from like their physical locations anymore and they're looking online, you have to have the same location. It's like my home group meets at a church in Billerica, Massachusetts. The church doesn't move. So if I give you the meeting address, every single Saturday night at 7 p.m., that's the meeting address. It's the same thing on Zoom. using the PMI with that same meeting number is that same address. People know that they can find a meeting at that time and place using that. So it's important to keep that setting turned on. All of us are now struggling with, we lost our meetings, we're creating them on Zoom, but now how do we proceed with getting that information to the people that are in the jails and in the detoxes and the hospitals when they get out? We have to start looking at that. It's very, very important that stays on the PMI. Just like a regular meeting time and link are the same each time the meeting meets. Your format is pre-planned before the meeting starts. So this one, we're kind of like learning as we go. It's a service meeting. My home group met last night. We're in a sorted format meeting. Last night was a living clean. So we knew what we were going to do before that meeting started. We knew how we were going to do the screen shares. We know how we were going to facilitate the meeting, who's going to co-host. All that stuff has to take place before the meeting begins. So when you show up, you actually have an NA meeting, not Shane's service meeting. Sharing an NA message.
Which happened yesterday for the Bluegrass Appalachian Regional meeting. But it worked out.
Sharing an NA message is not a mixed message. It's the same thing. If you're hosting a Narcotics Anonymous meeting, please make it a Narcotics Anonymous meeting. And that's just basic stuff for an online meeting. It's the same idea of my in-person home group is going to now apply to my virtual meeting. We get questions a lot about the seventh tradition. How do we proceed with that? Again, we're learning as we go. Some groups use Venmo, some groups use PayPal. You can use Zelle. These are all virtual apps that you can do a donation from a debit card direct to an account and you can withdraw. Your rent is now considered the price of your Zoom account. That's now your rent. So a meeting still should support itself. And if you believe that this is only going to be for a few weeks, you can use your home group's money to do whatever. If it's going to go longer than that, we still have to practice the seven traditions somehow. So everyone's meeting virtually.
You want to talk about literature maybe a little bit?
Yeah.
So
quickly, guys, because we got to get over to Jay.
Yeah.
Right.
We're already 40 minutes in.
We're almost done.
Okay. So I just want to touch on literature real quick. NA.org, all the IPs are available if you can find the PDF in the NA.org, like how it works, who is an addict, all the meeting readings, all the IPs, those can be shared from NA.org into your screen. Okay. If you have a living clean study group, right, and you're the host and you have a screen share where you are screen sharing the book for your people to read, that is appropriate because you are not distributing and giving out copies of Living Clean to other people. You're simply, it's as if someone is sitting next to you in a meeting and looking at your book and reading from your book. Okay. So I want to make sure that that's out there and very clear and understood by everybody that you're not violating the FIPT if you're screen sharing during the meeting for people to read from Living Clean or Guiding Principles or the basic text. Okay. Now, when it comes to the basic text or other literature that we have, what we do at Stay at Home is if a newcomer shows up and they do not have a basic text, and let's say they can't afford a basic text, you can go to the group can use using the seventh tradition or another member's willingness, can go to Google Books, and in Google Books you can purchase for like $7 and something cents or $9 and something cents a digital copy of the basic text as a gift certificate. So you have the option to purchase as a gift certificate the basic text and then ask the newcomer what is their email, and then you can email the gift certificate to them. They open it and it'll download, and they will now in their if they have Google or I'm not sure how it works on the Android, I'm sure it's the same thing, Kindle, they will then have a copy of the basic text on their phone just as if they were in the meeting. So that is how we are approaching the question of how to get a newcomer the basic text, and it seems to work for us. And we're going, like Shane said, we're going over, and I don't want to ramble too much longer on that.
One more thing, I have all the books virtually on my cell phone. So last night during my home group meeting, I did a screen share from my cell phone, the actual book. So
Hey,
just like Kelly was just talking about.
For those of us, Chris, go up to the top and highlight the address so they can see that in your search bar. Those of us that aren't tech, look up there, NA.org, you know, you can find all the IPs and the service booklets and everything. Anything but book link pieces are free to read on NA.org. You can refer people through public relations to that. There's a lot of resources on NA.org.
I just copied and pasted and put it in the chat too.
Thank you.
So again, if you have the virtually on your cell phone, you can just join the meeting from your cell phone. I can be on the computer, join the meeting, and I can join again on my cell phone, and I can share direct current approved literature right through my cell phone, screen share it to everyone. And it seemed to work great last night. I'm going to keep this screen on, so we're doing a screen share, not sharing people's faces, but raising your hand in a meeting. If you're on, I just talked about the dial-in settings. If you're on a cell phone, you're going to tap your screen, bottom right-hand side, you'll see 3 dots. You click those, click more, and raise hand. If you're on a computer, in the bottom of your screen, you'll see participants. You click that, and it'll bring up the participants list. You see the option to raise hand at the bottom. That's how you get recognized in a meeting, the same way you would in an in-person meeting by raising your hand. We do that virtually right now. The host and co-host will see the participants list with a blue hand that's raised. The list automatically populates itself by who raised their hand first. So the top name was the first one to raise it. So you don't have to like try to look at this and say who was first, it automatically organizes itself if you're a host or co-host. Everyone else, you'll just see a bunch of random hands raised. Don't worry, whoever's facilitating the meeting will have the order in which the hand was raised. The host will now click that name and click unmute and allow that person to share. When they're done, they mute them again, and then lower their hand. If you lower their hand before you mute them again, that name now drops to wherever it was in the original list. Keep the hand raised until they're done sharing, mute them, then lower hand. To access your chat, it's the same idea. Is you're going to tap the screen on a cell phone, bottom left-hand side this time, click participants. It's going to bring up the list, click chats on the participants list. If you're on a computer, bottom of your screen, you should see an option that says chat. Click that and opens up. In the chat, you have the option to send to everyone. If the chat is turned on, you have the option to send to everyone or individual, depending on the user settings. So that's how you access the chat.